All right, fellas, we got this week's weekly review. We have new power rankings up on the league page. I didn't have time to really go through and make notes, so I'm just going to kind of do this on the fly here. So let's see how this goes. On the start, we have myself versus David. I think this was one of the closer matchups of the week. I was able to pull out the victory by about 3 points. Stafford played decent for me this week. With my quarterback issues, I didn't have that problem this week because Carson Palmer had a concussion, so I was forced to start the one guy. My running back struggled this week. All of them had single-digit points. Really, Lamar Miller with only 2.9, my number one pick, struggled. But, of course, he's going against the Vikings, so I didn't expect a ton from him. My biggest play of the week was playing Martellus Bennett. He got me about 28 points, and the Vikings defense got me 17. Moving on to David's team, he did have 5 players get double-digit points. His biggest player was Theo Riddick, getting 23 points. Delaney Walker also a nice game with 15. He did play Torrey Smith, who got him 0 points. So tough game there. He could have replaced him with Chris Hogan, who he had on the bench, who got 13.5 points. And, if he would have made that change, he would have got the victory. Instead, he stays winless. So he's at the very bottom. Moving on, the next matchup we have is Philip versus Shane. Shane absolutely destroyed him. 158 to 67. On Phillip's team, Phillip had Aaron Rodgers get him 16 and Mike Evans get him 18. Everybody else was in single digits pretty much. I mean, Terrence West basically had 10. Really bad game out of Jeremy Hill, like 1 point. Julio struggled, which was kind of expected going against Denver with their elite defense. Will Fuller with the points. Kicker got a point. Kyle Rudolph 2.5. I mean, just really bad effort out of his team. Shane's team killed it this week. I mean, he had basically 4 players get over 20 points with Le'Veon Bell, T.Y. Hilton, Greg Olsen, and Tevin Coleman. He also had David Johnson with 32 points. So, I mean, his team was auto-drafted. He has probably number 1 and number 2 running back in fantasy with Bell and Johnson. So, he's pretty stacked there. I mean, the rest of his team is kind of weak outside of those two. He does have Greg Olsen, who's probably the one, if not the top tight end right now, probably number 2 if you still want to give Gronk that title. Nothing on his bench. Everybody's hurt for the most part or was on bye week this past week. The next matchup we have here is Dalton versus George. Dalton was able to pull out the victory by 8 points here. Big game out of Phillip Rivers for him with 26 points. Antonio Brown with 18. Hunter Henry with 15. 11 out of Crowder. 11 out of the Pats defense. Absolutely nothing on his bench. Most of it was on bye week and injuries as well. Not the best effort out of his running backs there, but an overall solid effort from a good bit of people to make things enough to get him the victory there. On George's team, he played Prescott at quarterback, got him 17.5. Got 14 out of Ryan Matthews, 14 out of Hopkins. Sean Jackson with just 5 points struggled. He did have basically 23 points out of Brandon LaFell. Defense got him 0 points. And he did have Marcus Mariota on the bench with 30.5 points. If he makes that change at quarterback there, that would be enough to swing things in his favor and get him the victory. But instead, Dalton continues his win streak at 3, and George continues his losing ways at his 2-game losing streak after starting 3-0. The next matchup we have here is Dakota versus Garrett. Dakota was the #1 team in the power rankings and was undefeated heading into the week. And Garrett was able to give him his first loss. Garrett had 142. Dakota had 120. Dakota played Matt Ryan at quarterback, even though it's going to be a tough week for him. It is the only quarterback on his lineup or on his team. He did give 15 points, which probably isn't too bad considering they're going up against Denver. He had 20 points out of Carlos Hyde. He had 21 out of Brandon Marshall. Alshon gave him 10. Kelvin Benjamin basically gave him 10. A.J. Green struggled a little bit with 7. For him, that's struggling. 16 out of the Bills' defense. Dakota forgot to start a kicker. I'm not really sure why. Wouldn't have really made a difference here because the one kicker he has on his bench only got him 7 points. Wouldn't have given him enough there, and I doubt there's any kicker available that would have put up that amount of points to make up the deficit there. On Garrett's team, Garrett looks like he had 7 players in double figures. 22 out of Carr, 16 out of Gurley, 16 out of Murray, 25 out of Cooper, 14 out of Gerson, 13 out of Bernard, and 23 out of Adam Vinatieri. Huge game there. I mean, he even had 20.5 points out of Artis Payne on the bench that he could have thrown in there at, out of position to up his score even a little bit more there. So overall, good effort out of Garrett there to knock off the number one team. Next matchup we have here is Joseph versus Ray. Ray finally got on the winning ways, snapped his losing streak. He put up quite a bit of points as well with 149, Joseph 80, so pretty good beat down there. Joseph's team had nobody get over 15 points outside of his defense, getting 17. Kirk Cousins had 12 points. Forte struggled a little bit with 7. He decided to, throw out maybe a curveball or a desperation play with Kenneth Dixon, who I believe it was his first game back this year. Got 1 point for him. Crabtree with 2.5. He had Stephon Diggs in his lineup. Not really sure why he did that, because it was notified that Diggs was out with the injury this week. So not the best play there. He did get 13 points out of Gronk. Gronk finally had a decent game with Brady being back, and then, like I said, 17 with the defense there. Nothing really great on his bench. Ray's team had 8 players in double figures. I mean, everybody on his team had double figures outside of defense and the kicker. Basically 30 out of Brady, 24 out of Jordan Howard, 11 out of James White, 23 out of Fitz, 12 out of Marvin Jones, 15 out of Benjamin, 14 out of Allen, 13 out of Thomas, and his entire bench was on bye week this week. So you got 5 players on bye week and you're still able to get the victory. It's a pretty good week there. So maybe Ray will make one of his epic runs like he likes to talk about. So we'll see how that goes. I'm not sure who he's matched up against with coming into this week, but we'll see how that goes. The last matchup we have here is Ray Sr. versus Michael. Ray Sr. Jumping up to the #1 team in the power rankings this week, putting up 152 points. Michael's 114. Ray Sr. had quite a bit of decent players this week. Ben with 29, Devontae Freeman with 20, Emmanuel Sanders with 11.5, Tyrell Williams 20, Sammy Coates 29, Josh Brown kicker with 12. Overall, very, very good effort there. Even C.J. Anderson struggled a little bit. He was still able to get the win there. On Joseph's team, he had some players have really nice games. Andrew Luck gave 22. Ezekiel Elliott with basically 31. McCoy put up 17, but outside of that, everybody was in single digits outside of his kicker with 12. And I mean, Mike Wallace basically had 10. So tough go there. Did have Randall Cobb on the bench with 15 points and Kenny Britt with 10. Would have increased his score a little bit, but ultimately wouldn't have made the difference there. All right, so since we're doing this on the fly, let's see. So we can see going into this week, Ray and Michael play each other. So two of the bottom teams kind of. The number 1, the number 12 team in the power rankings play each other, Ray Sr. and David. So Ray Sr. will probably stay in the number 1 spot. Shane and Dakota play each other, so that should be a pretty good matchup there. Shane's record's not the best, but he is putting up quite a bit of points on a weekly basis. And then all the other matchups are teams within a game of each other, so should be some good games going on this week. I believe there's only 2 teams on bye week this week, so that'll be nice to see as well. And then I'm just going to check the free agent report here real quick, see how things went today. Once again, Phillip got beat out for a kicker because he didn't bid enough money. Looks like Joseph missed out on Jeremy Curley. Looks like I believe it's Dalton paid quite a bit to get Jeremy Curley $11. Other than that, everything else looks pretty normal. I figured somebody would snatch up Russell Wilson. Looks like Joseph picked him up for $5 there. I picked up Justin Forsett, hoping maybe he'll get a good bit of touches between him and Theo Riddick there in Detroit. Maybe they'll stop giving the ball to Dwayne Washington, so we'll see how that goes. All right, best of luck to everybody this week, and see you next time.